What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another My Week With video. So this week, I've been driving the 2020 Toyota Highlander. This is the Platinum all-wheel drive gas V6 version, not the hybrid. In my week of driving, I managed to do 200 miles exactly. So lots of driving and lots of seat time here in the new Highlander. So this is going to be a follow-up video to my full review I already did back in December of 2019 on the Highlander. And this all-new Highlander is really impressive in a lot of ways. And I also have a new interior review that my wife and I did, and you can go check that out if you want to hear an in-depth review on the interior and also my wife's thoughts on it. But as far as my week with the Highlander, so there's a lot of things that further impressed me living with it for a week than it did on the initial press drive. The first thing is the amount of refinement and quietness you have in the new Highlander. So whenever I was on the launch, it was in Texas, and a lot of the roads we were on were pretty rough, so it made this interior seem really loud and like there was a lot of road noise. Now on normal paved roads here in Pennsylvania where I live, it is remarkable just how quiet this new Highlander is. I think it actually has made it one of the quieter options in this segment. I don't know if it's the most quiet of them all. I think maybe Mazda might still have them beat, maybe one or two others, but it is really impressive how this just feels so quiet, and that combined with this very luxurious interior in this fully loaded Platinum one, I mean, it was impressive. And a few family members that saw it were also really impressed with it. It really makes a statement with, especially the contrast stitching, all the colors. You have the tan leather, and then you have the dark brown upper door sills, and the stitching is brown, and then you have this whole silvery part on the dashboard and this massive screen. I mean, there's just a lot going on, but it's all very, very impressive. Another thing that's pretty impressive too that I got to try out some more here was this JBL stereo you get in the Platinum, and also it's an option in the Limited and maybe one or two other trims. But anyway, it's a 1200 watt 11 speaker system, and it is very, very impressive, very powerful sounding. And I actually did about an hour and a half road trip each way to deliver some stuff to a family member. And so those 3 hours on the highway, I learned a lot about the Highlander here. One of the things is, even at highway speeds, I mean, with the quiet interior and then this very impressive stereo, I mean, this thing, it is really a great cruiser. And so that was very impressive. Just the amount of bass and just the clarity of everything, it was very good. Even satellite radio sounded really, really good. So pretty impressed with the stereo here, and I think if you are really into music, it probably is worth going up to if you can afford one of these higher trims of the Highlander. This one, by the way, as tested, was just over $51,000, so it is expensive, and I'll get back to that in a few minutes whenever I compare this to some of the competition. But I think that it does feel that nice on this interior. It is nearing Lexus levels of luxury, and so you're getting close to Lexus money, but because you're having such a nice interior, I think it kind of makes sense. Another thing I got to test out now that I had this one for a week is the torque vectoring all-wheel drive system. So on the press drive, I was mostly driving a hybrid and then a lower trim version of the Highlander, which does not get the torque vectoring all-wheel drive. Only the Limited and the Platinum get that system, and it's supposed to give you a sportier handling feel with that torque vectoring system. And on the back roads here in southwestern Pennsylvania, I mean, I did mostly highway driving in this, but the a little bit of back roads driving I'm doing now and stuff, it doesn't feel really any different than the other Highlander that I drove without the torque vectoring system. So I mean, yeah, maybe if you're really pushing it, but who's really pushing it in a Highlander? So even if you're an enthusiast and that whole torque vectoring thing sounds cool to you, I don't think it's worth going up to. Personally, I don't notice a large enough difference to warrant the upgrade on its own. The standard all-wheel drive system in the Highlander is going to be just fine, and it does what it's supposed to do, which is give you all-weather traction for those who want to drive in the snow and all that kind of stuff. So that was one thing that wasn't super impressive. Another thing that I was a little underwhelmed with was the lane keeping assist system on the highway. So did the adaptive cruise control for part of the highway drive, and the adaptive cruise works well on its own, but it has the lane trace assist now, where it kind of has a lane keeping assist on the highway, but it's very relaxed. Toyota's system is pretty relaxed. It doesn't do a whole lot of actual steering, so it will give you a little bit of assist in your steering, but it doesn't try and be, a semi-autonomous thing or anything like that. Like Volvo's system will actually take even sharp corners very well, and even Honda's system does a pretty good job of doing most of the steering for you. Toyota's gives you a hint of steering help, and that's about it. Another thing though that was very impressive in the Highlander is whenever I had this vehicle loaded up with a bunch of family members on that little highway road trip, it was impressive the amount of power this V6 has. Even with we had 5 people in the vehicle, even with 5 people in here, it still got up and went very, very well, and going up hills and stuff, no problem whatsoever. And so I was impressed. The amount of power you get in this V6 is great, and it's awesome that this V6 is standard. And the hybrids, of course, run a 4-cylinder with electric boost, and the hybrid is still going to be the way to go if you want better fuel economy, because the hybrid version of the Highlander, that's really, Toyota's one of the very few, I think that and the Explorer are the only ones that even have a hybrid option, and you get much better fuel economy in those hybrid versions. You can go watch my review where I talk more about the hybrid stuff in depth if that appeals to you. But here for this normal gas version, my fuel economy, which I would say my driving was at least 75% highway, so definitely more highway than city driving. I still am only averaging 21.1 mpg, which is a little disappointing because this vehicle is supposed to get 27 miles per gallon on the highway, along with 20 miles per gallon in the city and 23 combined. So I'm not even at that combined number, even though I was doing way more than 50% of my driving on the highway. So that's kind of underwhelming. But again, I guess if you're not going for a hybrid Highlander, then you probably aren't too worried about fuel economy, because the hybrid version is a very minor upcharge, and it makes complete sense. Honestly, if I were buying a Highlander, I would go for the hybrid, just because you're not trying to have anything super sporty anyway in a 3-row crossover, and having the better fuel economy I think is more important than having a little bit of extra power that you get with this V6. Fuel economy wasn't amazing, but then again, it's on par with all the other 3-row competitors in this segment. Like the week I had in a Kia Telluride, I did less highway driving in that, but that I was getting into like 19 mpg or something, so you're about the same amount of fuel economy. But I was hoping to get a little bit better on the highway. A couple other little things I noticed here about the Platinum version of the Highlander. So this Platinum you can only get with the captain's chairs in the second row. You cannot get a bench in Platinum models, and the Platinum really doesn't give you a whole lot of extra stuff over the Limited. You do get the panoramic roof. That's the only way to get that, and it is a very nice pano roof. It's really big and great. So you get that. This screen is standard, the 12.3 inch screen, but you can't get that screen on a Limited with just $1,000 option package. So honestly, if it were me configuring one of these, I would go for the Limited and get the bench in the second row to seat 8 people instead of 7, because that pass-through in the second row, it's very narrow, and unless you're a very small child, trying to walk in between those seats is going to be nearly impossible anyway. And then the fact that this also, one thing that I'm not in love with the Highlander is that you have a latch that you have to pull in order to get into that third row. So if you're going to be folding that second row seat anyway, since most people can't fit through the second row seats there, you might as well just get a bench and get an extra seat at the same time. And that third row in the back, it is still pretty good. I'll go into all the details of that in the interior review, but I will say that we had a family member that was 5'6", and them sitting in that third row, even with the second row seats slid forward a little bit, they still weren't super comfortable. So even if you have enough legroom, it still isn't a super comfortable seat. So wouldn't use it for long road trips, if you can avoid it, unless there's smaller children, things like that. But otherwise, it still is, like I said, a pretty good third row, and good you have the 3 seats back there. One nice thing, you get like the heated steering wheel with the Limiteds, and that is a really nice feature. And one cool thing about this heated steering wheel is it's down here in this little button area, lower down in this control panel. And at first I was like, I don't like that. Usually I like heated steering wheels that have the button on the steering wheel or somewhere up a little bit higher, so you don't have to dig down into a lower area to turn it on. But the cool thing is, since it's in this area, it has a button that actually has like a on and off switch. So you can actually press in the heated steering wheel button and it will stay on in between key cycles. So for example, if you're driving all winter and every single day you have to come in here and turn on the heated steering wheel, in this car you don't have to keep turning it on. You just turn it on once in the beginning of the winter, and it will continue to automatically heat up the steering wheel and keep it heated all winter long and not have to press that button a single time. which is a very cool feature. And this is the first vehicle I've seen that has that, and I think that is actually really well thought out now that I've lived with that and discovered that feature about it. So very cool that they have that, and that kind of makes it my favorite heated steering wheel setup right now, just because of how it's kind of automatic. But yeah, so personally I'd go for a limited. You know, I think you can get one of those for around $49,000 instead of $51,000. But even at $49,000 for a limited version of the Highlander, you know, it still is a couple $1,000s or maybe $1,000 or $2,000 more expensive than a lot of the competitors. You know, for example, the Kia Telluride is really the main one that's, you know, undercuts this by a couple $1,000s, and I prefer the Kia still over the Highlander, because the Kia, you have heated and cooled second row seats versus only heated seats in the second row here in the Highlander. So you get, you know, more features like that. I also like the way things are set up a little bit better in the Telluride. For example, the center armrest, which I'll get into more detail in the interior review, but I don't like the center armrest. It's probably the worst in all the 3 rows that I've reviewed. And so unfortunately, that's kind of a pain if you actually use your center console fairly often, and the Telluride has a better setup there. Also, the Telluride has a button for the second row seats to sling those seats automatically forward by just a press of a button, which means kids can do it, all that kind of stuff, whereas this lever is going to be tough for kids to do because it's so heavy and just kind of cumbersome still. And so the Telluride has that. The Palisade also has that, and the Palisade is also very nice from Hyundai. That's another one that I think I prefer over the Highlander here. And also the Honda Pilot. The Honda Pilot still is a little sportier feeling, maybe not quite as roomy, but I think it's pretty close, honestly. And the Pilot also has, they're actually the first ones who did the power you know, button there to sling that second row forward. So all 3 of those, I think, just for the ease of use, if you're actually going to use that third row, I think for ease of use, all 3 of those 3 win out over the Highlander. The Highlander still is going to be the greatest pick if you want, you know, the most reliable vehicle, since Toyota reliability is legendary. And so, you know, if that's, you know, the main thing you're looking for, that's definitely, I think, where the Highlander wins out. And also just the fact you can get it fully loaded up, and if you want to, you know, get a really impressive interior, I think the Toyota still is one of those top competitors, you know, and it's very, very impressive. It just, again, there's a few things that could use a little bit of work. I do really like this huge screen, though. You know, I was a little iffy about it on the press drive because there was a lot going on the screen, and if you're just first impression trying to digest everything, it can be a lot. But after living with this screen for a week and using it, you know, for several hours on the highway and stuff, I actually really like it now. And once you figure out where everything's at, it gets a lot less intimidating, and it works very, very well. And I love the fact that especially you can have a large Apple CarPlay display and still have your climate controls up, or still have your radio controls up if you're only using CarPlay for maps or something like that, for example. And so I love this screen now. And I think actually Toyota did this screen better than Lexus did, because Lexus has a very similar, you know, 12-inch screen that's touchscreen now in the RX and stuff. But that's a little bit of a further reach. This is a little closer to you, and I think it's a little lower, so it's a little more well done, I think, than actually the Lexus system. And the menu system in this is easier to use than the Lexus system. So I think Toyota is on the right track here with how to integrate this large screen. But yeah, so anyway, that's all my thoughts here on my week with the Highlander. It's a very, very impressive, you know, competitor. And again, especially if you want good fuel economy, that hybrid version is really the only worthwhile game in town, I think, since the Ford Explorer is just so underwhelming to me for the new version. So I think Toyota definitely has the best solution if you want good fuel economy. As far as the normal gas stuff, like I said, I still think I prefer a few of the others better, but still, nonetheless, a very impressive new Highlander here from Toyota. So anyway, let me know your thoughts on the new Highlander in the comments below. Be sure to go watch the interior review if you want to hear more on that, and also make sure you also watch the driving review that I did back in December of 2019 if you want to hear about the hybrid and all the other details of this new you know, version of the Highlander. I have more information in there. But anyway, thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.